Hey everyone, it's Kristan Hawkins. Welcome to this new episode of the Explicitly Pro-Life podcast. I want to thank everyone for tuning in. There is so much to talk about, and I hope everyone is staying safe right now and practicing the social distancing guidelines and listening to what experts are saying and staying home and staying away from vulnerable peoples right now. I was actually on a call this morning with Vice President Pence with about 34 other national leaders, and we got a chance to hear from the Vice President and ask him some questions about this coronavirus epidemic. And the one thing he really asked us to, as leaders, to stress to all of you at home is to make sure you're following the CDC's guidelines. We're almost about halfway through that 15 days to stop the spread campaign. And that's super important. As you all know, I have 2 children with cystic fibrosis. So we are taking this very seriously at the Hawkins household. We've actually been in quarantine, self-quarantine since Friday, March 13th. And we're stocked up on food and have food hopefully to last through the end of April. And we're missing our family, and I'm sorry that I had to cancel a lot of my speaking engagements, but we've got to keep our children who are especially vulnerable, susceptible to a disease that affects the respiratory system safe during this time. So I hope you all are practicing the social distancing guidelines, which, by the way, before I get into the topic that I really want to talk about today about how the abortion industry is using this coronavirus crisis to kind of advance their agenda, I do want to point out that when everyone's talking about social distancing and how states should be enforcing and telling businesses that there can only be so many employees at a certain location, when we're talking about social distancing rules, these social distancing rules are actually proving that your right to bodily autonomy can be regulated if your actions risk the health and life of another human being, which, by the way, is an argument we have all the time on college campuses, all the time when we're speaking with pro-abortion leaning folks who try to claim that their right to bodily autonomy supersedes everyone else's rights, which just doesn't make sense. And you can point to this coronavirus pandemic as really a kind of a learning lesson for people who in the future might try to use that argument with you that, like, look, we have gone to great lengths as a society, as a nation, to ensure that vulnerable people aren't being harmed. And, we know through social distancing, your right to go to the grocery store or your right to walk up to your neighbor and have a conversation ends when your body can be transmitting a virus, even though you may not have symptoms, to another human being. So just FYI, I would keep that in mind. Okay, so today I want to talk to you about 7 ways the pro-abortion industry, mostly led by Planned Parenthood, is capitalizing on this coronavirus. And today, actually, the pro-life leaders in America actually released a letter. There's about 50 organizational leaders we sent to the Health and Human Services Secretary Alex Azar, asking him to be watching what's going on. We've been asking that HHS and the Trump administration ensure that none of the emergency abortion response funds are diverted to the abortion industry. Ensure that the abortion industry ceases operations and joins health care providers, that they allow that all of their information, all of their personal protection equipment actually goes to actual doctors and hospitals who are working right now to protect people from the coronavirus. The other thing we've asked is to ensure that telemedicine webcam abortions are not expanded during this crisis, and to make sure that the FDA maintains their limits on dispensing the toilet bowl abortion drug RU486. We also have asked that the Trump administration make sure that mail order abortions, so the sale of those RU486 pills, doesn't start happening over the mail. And that's something that we've seen the abortion industry started to do. We've actually had several cases this year alone where women are getting drugs from overseas manufacturers of the abortion pills, which are really, really dangerous for women. I mean, not only are they dangerous for human babies, because every abortion pill, abortion will kill a baby, but they're very dangerous for women. And the other thing we've asked the Trump administration to do is to make sure we're promoting medically accurate and supportive information to women right now, and that the scare tactics of the abortion industry aren't allowed to continue on. So, action items for you before I go on is you need to call your governor. And I'm going to go into this next, so kind of those 7 ways the pro-abortion movement is capitalizing on coronavirus. But the call your governor action item is something you all can do right now. Students Until I started a campaign yesterday on that. We've got more than 4,000 people have taken action on this. But you can email your governor, call your governor, and tell them to make sure they declare that when they're making these orders saying that non-essential businesses shouldn't be up and running, or that non-essential surgeries are happening to preserve medical equipment, that should always include the abortion industry. You can go to studentsforlife.org's website. You can check out our blog. Just look at the blog titled Governors. Contact your governor, and you'll see the link, and you can take action. It takes you 30 seconds to do it. So, all right. So sorry, that was Fox News pinging me on my Instagram right now. I have to respond to them. All right. So I'm going to go into these 7 ways the abortion movement is capitalizing on coronavirus. I hope you can take this information, spread it around, educate your friends. I especially find this information helpful when you're trying to educate maybe mushy middle friends about the deceitfulness of the abortion industry. I think, what we hear a lot of times on campuses when you're talking about Planned Parenthood and their predatory abortion business, it almost sounds too terrible to actually be true. And when we talk about how Planned Parenthood is preying on women, it makes them, we almost sound like conspiracy theorists. It's crazy, but because you have to think about from their perspective. Those who aren't with us on abortion, they start hearing us talking about how the abortion industry is preying upon women and all these terrible things they do, and all these lawsuits that have been waged against, predatory abortionists who aren't very good at their job. They're not even good at killing babies. And it sounds crazy. So I find that this might be helpful for you when you're trying to talk with your friends and family about the predatory abortion business, and to show like this is what they're really after. This is kind of the 30,000 foot view, that it's not just helping that woman who's in crisis, who is in poverty and is living with an abusive boyfriend and, quote unquote, really needs that abortion. There's more to the story, and there's a broader strategy being deployed within the abortion movement, and that doesn't get depicted by the mainstream media. And we just have to be careful when we're talking about, once again, not to sound like conspiracy people, like that we're always talking about these crazy conspiracies. Essentially, when you think about what the abortion industry is doing right now, you have to think about it from their perspective. Rahm Emanuel, so he was President Obama's chief of staff. He was the Chicago mayor. He has an infamous quote that he said, "You never want a serious crisis to go to waste." And what I mean by that is an opportunity to do things you would not have done before. End quote. That's a direct quote. And now this is the man who was like the political genius behind President Obama's presidency. This is what the political left says. And if you read Rahm Emanuel's other statements, this isn't surprising. If you live in Chicago, this shouldn't be surprising to you. Also, if you've studied Saul Alinsky, which, by the way, President Obama and, wannabe President Hillary Clinton both studied intensely with the Saul Alinsky family. And I think Hillary Clinton's senior thesis was on Saul Alinsky's kind of activism tactics. And this is very Saul Alinsky-esque, right? You never let a crisis go to waste. You use that crisis for your own benefit, your gain. You can sneak through things that normally couldn't get done. Prime example was today. I was actually reading about the emergency coronavirus package that the Senate is, debating right now, and the fighting that's going on. And I was reading a story from one of my friends' Facebook pages, and he was criticizing Republicans for, not allowing this, this bill to be passed, and the Republicans were delaying it. And I was like, well, wait a minute, let me go see what the Republicans are saying. So then I went and saw what the Republicans were saying. And lo and behold, this Senate package that the Democrats are insisting that, the version they want is loaded with pork. There's like $30 million in the Senate package for coronavirus relief for the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C., or Performing Arts Center. There's like $300 million in it for, I think it was PBS or MP or something like that. Like, what does that have to do with coronavirus? There was a whole bunch of money put in there and tax credits put in there for alternative solar and wind energy. The Green New Deal, they're trying to insert the Green New Deal into this package. So you can totally see how what Rahm Emanuel said is coming to fruition right now in the U.S. Senate. We'll see what the final bill, what the final bill language contains. But this is what's happening. This is what the abortion industry is doing. So 7 overreaches that the abortion industry is trying to use this crisis right now to advance their agenda. The first one is they're pretending that abortion is healthcare or quote unquote essential services. So with state governors and also mayors kind of shutting down businesses, saying non-essential businesses aren't allowed to be operating right now. They have to be working from home. The abortion industry is saying, no. We are an essential service. This is an abortion. Providing an abortion is an essential service to women that they have to have that because, time, quote unquote, time is of the essence. The American College of OBGYNs has issued a public statement saying that abortion is always an essential component of comprehensive health care. The National Abortion Federation has been saying this. You've got kind of quotes and tweets from abortionists all over the internet making this argument. Today, in the letter that the pro-life movement released to the Secretary of Health and Human Services, Azar, we had more than 30,000 physicians represented from a few different organizations that signed on who all object to calling abortion essential. Abortions, as you all know, as pro-lifers, are not essential. They're not even healthcare, for gosh sakes. But you have states like Massachusetts, New York, who are, deeming abortion essential. Which, by the way, I don't know if you all have been watching Fox News as closely as my husband's been watching Fox News right now during this coronavirus pandemic. But I find it so crazy that, Andrew Cuomo, the governor of New York, who literally ordered the One World Trade Center be lit up in pink after he signed into law just last year, just a year ago, an extreme abortion piece of legislation that was passed that basically reverted all of New York's abortion laws to the most extreme stance. So allowing abortions now in all 9 months, and even saying that if a pregnant woman is killed while she's pregnant, the man or the person who commits the crime, usually the man, usually the partner or spouse, but the person who commits the crime against a pregnant woman won't be held criminally liable for killing a second human person. They might get other charges, but not for murder. It's crazy. So they passed this extreme abortion law. He literally lit up one World Trade Center pink in honor of the passage and his signing of this bill, and yet he is on TV today. I was watching, basically chastising New Yorkers for not taking this seriously and not protecting vulnerable people in New York enough by not practicing social distancing and not changing and being willing to sacrifice for others. I just find it so ironic that here it is, the governor of New York, who is a staunch abortion supporter and an extremist, mind you, and he's on TV calling for New Yorkers to think about the most vulnerable and care about the most vulnerable. And then on the other hand, he supports abortion no matter what in all 9 months and taxpayer funded. It's unbelievable. But anyway, so number one, the abortion industry is trying to make the case right now, abortion's healthcare and it's essential, and it's not. Governors in Ohio, Texas, and Louisiana have all ordered non-essential surgeries to stop in the state, and they've clarified that includes the abortion industry, because you have to think about, if these abortionists are committing abortions, one, they're certainly not practicing social distancing, and two, they're using up very precious gear right now, PPE, personal protective equipment. So gowns and masks, they should be using those things when they're committing abortions. And when these abortion facilities are using this protective equipment, this is equipment that could be used at hospitals if you ask me, if you ask Abby Johnson, other pro-life leaders, this equipment should be donated to hospitals and clinics that are getting ready to fight a wave of inpatients, of those who are suffering from the coronavirus. And if you think about a lot of these abortion facilities, if they're Planned Parenthood abortion facilities, are buying this PPE with taxpayer dollars. So they should be donating this equipment back. So abortion, we know, not healthcare and certainly not essential service. We as a pro-life movement really need to be pushing back. That's why we want you to contact your governors, tell them to ensure that the abortion facilities are shutting down, just like all other non-essential businesses. And when they say that, non-essential surgeries like hip replacements, knee replacements need to be put on hold to preserve medical staff, time, and beds and equipment, same should go for abortion. Abortion is no exception. The second overreach number 2 that the abortion industry is trying to make right now during this coronavirus epidemic. Right now, they're trying to coerce healthcare workers to administer abortions. So ACOG has advised, quote, community-based and hospital-based clinicians should consider collaboration to ensure abortion access is not compromised during this time. So that's that National American College of OBGYNs, which is super pro-abortion leaning, not an unbiased source by any means. The very reverend president of the National Abortion Federation, she's echoed calls for, why community healthcare workers and physicians should work together with abortion facilities to ensure that women can still get access to abortions right now. Don't let them do this. This is crazy. I mean, there's been an abortionist shortage for years in America because, shock, no one wants to go to medical school, spend $200,000, $300,000 in a medical degree, and then be responsible for ending human lives. This shortage existed, well before coronavirus, and honestly, it's going to continue. Especially as groups like Abby Johnson's and then the We're None organization continues to reach out to abortion facility workers and abortionists. The third overreach that the abortion industry is committing right now, they're trying right now to kind of push through messaging, is when this coronavirus began, the pandemic began, when people in America started paying more attention to it, you saw tweets of abortion supporters and Planned Parenthood workers and abortionists actually saying, okay, now is the time for you to stock up on your birth control, trying to use corona as a way to kind of get ahead of the corona baby craze. Everyone's talking about that. In 9 months, we're going to see a wave of births because people are at home and they have nothing else to do. But somehow that worries Planned Parenthood, that if people are having too much sex, it's worrisome to them. I don't actually think that's a bad thing if people are at home having sex. If it's a married couple, if someone's in a relationship and they're having sex, I don't know why Planned Parenthood is getting so nervous here. The long and short of it is they're not really nervous. They just see an opportunity to make more money. And that's really what this is if they can sell more birth control, if they can sell more abortions, they're all about it. Okay, fourth overreach. We saw this a little bit last week. So there's been insinuation that without human organs from aborted infants, there will be a delay in the treatment and the cure for coronavirus, which, by the way, let's just make this very clear. The Charlotte Lozier Institute has talked about this. No fetal cells have ever been used that have been effective in creating a cure. That hasn't happened. And they're not being used to create vaccines today. That this is just not true. When we think about there was a Washington Post article last week. It was an NIH, National Institutes of Health, a researcher in Montana. It's one person who was basically complaining the fact that these aborted fetal stem lines, new lines, aren't available to her to come up with a cure for coronavirus. The cure for coronavirus is not going to come out of aborted stem cell lines because there's been no cure that's come out of aborted stem cell lines. There's been cures that have come from adult stem cell research, but not out of fetal stem cells. So you're going to hear this. This is just basically another way, because the Trump administration has been very clear that they are not going to fund research on new lines of aborted infant stem cells. And so this is just a way for the abortion industry to use this crisis as a call for something that they just really, really want to do. Overreach number 5. Pressuring the FDA to reduce medical standards for distributing the toilet bowl abortion pills, RU486. This is something that we know that the abortion industry has been trying to do for a while. So the abortion industry wants to get all abortions, as many as possible, in the first trimester, because they read the same polls that we do. They know second, third trimester abortions are going to go away. They also know it's too expensive to operate brick and mortar abortion facilities. They also have a problem with disposing of the bodies of babies. It's much easier if they tell a woman to sit on a toilet and flush. So we know the abortion industry wants to move towards medical abortions, these chemical abortions where it's a pill. You don't have to convince an abortionist to kill anyone, quote unquote, or rip another human being apart and have to put them back together in the products of conception lab. All you're doing is simply prescribing some pills, and then a woman is taking it on her own time, and it kind of it's easier for them to sell it to physicians, where you can be an abortionist but not really be an abortionist, a yucky abortionist. So we know the abortion industry has been going for this. We also know the TeleMed abortions are something that they've been asking the FDA and states to relax rules on, because they want to be able to have an abortionist in one state get on a phone with another woman in another state and then say, yep, you're good. You can get the RU486 pill, no physical exam, and then have a nurse in that state hand her the first RU486 pill. That's been their intention. They've tried this in Iowa. Thankfully, it's been shut down. So this is something we have to watch. There's been lots of tweets, lots of kind of chatter in the abortion industry. This is why we need TeleMed abortions. This is why we need the FDA to relax rules on RU486, which this is crazy. RU486 abortions, as many as 5 to 7% of all women who undergo an RU486 chemical toilet bowl abortion, they'll actually require a surgical abortion. And 3% of women who undergo an RU486 abortion will end up in the emergency room. This is compounding one crisis for another, and something we should not be encouraging ever, and certainly not during this time where you're trying to keep people out of the emergency room, out of the hospital, unless you have coronavirus and need immediate care. The other overreach, number 6. We saw this a week and a half ago, and certainly still coming up. There have been efforts by the abortion industry to infiltrate the coronavirus aid packages to have funds available for the abortion industry. And that is what we saw at the House of Representatives. They were refusing, Democratic leaders were refusing to apply the Hyde Amendment, which is, for years, since the late 70s, has been the bipartisan thing that, regardless of how you feel personally about abortion, taxpayer dollars shouldn't be used for abortions unless in case I think their exemptions are life of the mother, rape, or incest. This has been a bipartisan thing. Even President Obama, when he ran for president, both times said he supported the Hyde Amendment. Now in 2016, the abortion industry really got their hooks into the Democratic Party. And in 2016, the DNC officially changed their platform to call for taxpayer-funded abortions. And all the candidates actually running for president on the Democratic side this year came out very loud and proud for taxpayer-funded abortion. So this has been kind of like this extremist shift that's been happening. But this is what we saw with the first Corona aid package in the House of Representatives. The Democrats were absolutely refusing to apply Hyde Amendment. I mean, it's super easy. Just apply Hyde. Just say none of these funds for the coronavirus emergency to make sure, people can pay their rent, their mortgages, and afford to feed their children shouldn't be used for abortions. It should be super easy, common sense, but it's not. Why? Going back to my earlier point, they never want to waste a good crisis to do things they normally wouldn't be able to do. There you go. All right, the last overreach I'm going to go through. This one has been kind of crazy. I didn't even believe it when I first saw it. I was like, wait a minute, they surely aren't doing that. And then I saw it and I was like, why would I think anything differently? So there have been comments made from abortion supporters, abortion industry leaders, even Planned Parenthood and their fundraising emails, saying that essentially President Trump's administration, their ban of taxpayer-funded abortions overseas, so that's the Mexico City policy that President Obama, that executive order he announced immediately after he became president, actually expanded, that this ban on overseas abortions, our tax dollars funding overseas abortions, somehow contributed to the coronavirus. Let me just stop there. They said that our refusal to use taxpayer dollars, U.S. taxpayer dollars, to fund abortions overseas contributed to the coronavirus. That's nonsense. Completely unrelated. Doesn't even make sense. Doesn't even make sense. But there you go. So the abortion industry, they continue to overreach. I know we shouldn't be shocked or surprised by any of these things because this is what these folks do for a living, is they dismember human beings. They piece them back together, and then they tell his or her mom that it was nothing, it was just a blob of tissue. So, I mean, I guess we shouldn't be surprised, but I still am. When I was reading some of what the abortion industry has been up to, but I'm reading some of the tweets that have been coming out from abortion apologists and kind of those leading abortion voices on Twitter, it was unbelievable. And, the abortion industry, they are not stopping. In Ohio, as I mentioned, the state had said that non-essential businesses, non-essential surgeries need to cease. They need to preserve the PPE equipment, the personal protective equipment, make sure hospitals have that equipment. The abortion industry is openly defying the state of Ohio, and then actually even went and bragged about it to a newspaper. Like, they're not even afraid of this. So we need to continue our drumbeat of calling for governors, emailing our governors, telling them to make sure these abortion facilities are listed under non-essential. This is a time where all of America has gotten together to preserve life. We are all making intense sacrifices to preserve the most vulnerable, to keep the most vulnerable healthy in our nation. Why would we say Planned Parenthood should still be operating at this time? That they should be using the valuable PPE, this valuable equipment that we know we have shortages of, that hospitals desperately need, that nurses and doctors desperately need to treat and prevent themselves from becoming affected with coronavirus. Why should they be able to use it when hospitals are in desperate need for this? I think it's a strange time to see that so many are protecting life, but yet then Planned Parenthood sends out the fundraising emails. The abortion industry is active in all of their press and their media, trying to take ground during this time, which we know is not what anyone should be doing. You shouldn't be, or you think this would be like basic kind of human decency. Like, now is not a time to kind of capitalize and advance your extremist agenda if you're for abortion. Like, that just should not be the case. But I think it shows you the crass opportunism of the abortion industry. And to be honest with you, I mean, with what we know they do every single day, I guess none of us should really be surprised. So, hey, thanks for tuning in this week to this episode of Explicitly Pro-Life. I hope you can use these kind of 7 ways the abortion industry is overreaching right now to message to your friends, family who might be a little kind of confused about why you're talking about abortion like a time like this. And I think you can use this as an opportunity to show them the extremism of the other side. Like I said, I think when we're on campuses sometimes and we talk about Planned Parenthood's business model and their predatory business model, we can almost seem some kind of conspiracy theory promoter-ish. And it just seems so bad. And even though you know what you're saying is truth, what you're saying seems so bad. And it's almost hard for them to grasp the fact that this brand that they have a positive association with, the Planned Parenthood, could be doing something so bad. So now is the time you can talk about that. I would encourage you to keep active talking about abortion, because the abortion industry certainly hasn't stopped, and they're going to use this to sell more abortions. They're going to use this to get more taxpayer dollars. They're going to do whatever they can to advance their agenda, because they know they're losing. They know momentum has been on our side. This is what we've been doing at Students for Life. We've been encouraging all of our Students for Life leaders to get active online, having conversations, convert your friends and family right now. Talk about this issue. Just because we're at home doesn't mean our pro-life mission has stopped. We're just moving from campuses to computers, and you all can do the same thing. If you're looking for more things that you can do right now during your at-home quarantine, go to the Students for Life website. Check out our blog. We have a top 8 list of things you can do. We've got webinars, Facebook Lives, all kinds of trainings happening. We're going to start our phone banking for the 2020 election efforts or voter education efforts. So we're certainly not stopping or slowing down Students for Life. We are going to keep going, and we're going to keep pressing forward because we know the abortion industry is not going to stop, and they're not going to take a coronavirus break and from accomplishing their evil agenda. And we should not stop advocating for life, advocating for the most vulnerable in our society, and being there as a witness and being there as a support network for any woman who is facing an unplanned crisis pregnancy. And just like I said at the beginning, remember, all of these arguments that you're hearing right now about social distancing and why social distancing is important, the next time you get in a conversation about abortion and bodily autonomy comes up, that I have the right to do whatever I want with my body, which this comes up every time I talk about abortion, just remind them of what social distancing proves. Social distancing proves that what you can do with your body stops when your body can harm the life, risk the life of another human being. So thanks, guys, for tuning in. If you guys have questions, you can go ahead and put them down in the comments down below, and I'll try to answer them on a future episode. And we have some exciting updates coming on Explicitly Pro-Life in the next few weeks, so stay tuned. Bye.